equality back. Who you talking about? Jordon Peterson, trending #1 on Twitter? Jordon Peterson, international bestseller? Jordon Peterson, right? This is what I'm saying to you. Why the rage, bruh? You're doing well, but you're a mean, mad white man, and you're gonna get us right.
I mean, I'm not making the case that I haven't had advantages in my life and disadvantages in my life like most people. You don't know anything about my background or where I came from, and it doesn't matter to you because fundamentally I'm a mean white man. That's a hell of a thing to say in a debate.
Welcome back, guys, to Malnot Reacts, and in this video you'll be seeing Jordon Peterson teaming up with one of the best liberal debaters out there, Stephen Fry. And they will be going against two liberals named Michael Eric Dyson and Michelle Goldberg. The topic of the debate was political correctness. Now, you might already know about political correctness. It actually came from the left. So the debate kind of revolves around when does the left goes too far? Is it good? Is it bad? They talk about those things. But what actually happens in this debate is that the liberals will be exposing themselves and how bad their ideology and how weak their ideology really is. And side by side, I will be giving you some examples of the real world that are happening right now in this year. So let's start the video without wasting any time from now.
How did we get to the point where the hijacking of the discourse on political correctness has become a kind of Manichaean distinction between us and them? The abortive fantasy just presented is remarkable for both its clarity and yet the muddiness of the context from which it has emerged. What's interesting to me is that when we look at the radical left, I'm saying, where they at? I want to join them. They ain't running nothing. I'm from a country where a man stands up every day to tweet the moral mendacity of his viciousness into a nation he has turned into his psychic commode. Y'all got Justin, we got Donald. So what's interesting then is that political correctness has transmogrified into a caricature of the left. The left came up with the term political correctness, shall I remind you. We were tired of our excuses and our excesses and our exaggerations. We were willing to be self-critical in a way that I fear my confrères, my compatriots, are not. Don't take yourself too seriously. Smile. Take yourself not seriously at all, but what you do with deadly seriousness. Now it is transmogrified into an attempt to characterize the radical left. The radical left is a metaphor, it's a symbol, it's an articulation. They don't exist, their numbers are too small. I'm on college campuses, I don't see much of them coming. When I hear about identity politics, it amazes me. The collectivist identity politics, last time I checked, white folk invented race. That was an invention from a dominant culture that wanted groups at their behest. The invention of race was driven by the demand of a dominant culture to subordinate others. Right? Patriarchy was the demand of men to have their exclusive vision presented. The beauty of feminism is it's not going to resolve differences between men and women. It just says men don't automatically get the last word. Of course, in my crib, they never did. And so identity politics has been generated as a bête noire of the right, and yet the right doesn't understand the degree to which identity has been foisted upon black people and brown people and people of color from the very beginning on women and trans people. You think that I want to be part of a group that is constantly abhorred by people at Starbucks? I'm minding my own black business. Walking down the street, I have group identity thrust upon me. They don't say, ah, ha, ha, there goes a Negro. Highly intelligent, articulate, verbose, capable of rhetorical fury at the drop of a hat. We should not interrogate him as to the bona fides of his legal status. No, they treat me as part of a group. And the problem is that our friends don't want to acknowledge is that the hegemony, the dominance of that group has been so vicious that it has denied us the opportunity to exist as individuals. Individualism is the characteristic moment in modernity. Mr. Peterson is right. The development of the individual, however, is predicated upon notions of intelligence. Immanuel Kant and David Hume and others. Philosophically, Descartes comes along, introducing knowledge into the to the phrase saying that knowledge is based upon a kind of reference to the golden intelligence, the reflective glass that one possesses, and yet it got rooted in the very ground of our existence. So knowledge has fleshly basis, and what I'm saying to you, the knowledge that I bring as a person of color makes a difference in my body because I know what people think of me and I know how they respond to me, and that ain't no theory. Am I mad at trigger warnings? The only trigger warning I want is from a cop. Are you about to shoot me? Not funny. In America, where young black people die repeatedly, unarmed, without provocation. And so for me, identity politics is something very serious. And what's interesting about safe spaces, I hear about the university. I teach there. Look, if you're in a safe space in your body, you don't need a safe space. Some of that is overblown. Some of it is ridiculous. I understand. I believe that the classroom is a robust place for serious learning. I believe in the interrogation of knowledge based upon our understanding mutually of the edifying proposition of enlightenment. At the same time, some people ain't as equal as others. So we have to understand the conditions under which they have emerged and in which they have been benighted and attacked by their own culture. And I ain't seen nobody be a bigger snowflake than white men who complain. Mommy, they won't let us play and have everything we used to have under the old regime where we were right racists and supremacists and dominant and patriarchs and hated gays and lesbians and transsexuals. That, yeah, you got to share. This ain't your world. This everybody's world. And let me end by saying this. You remember that story from David Foster Wallace? Fish are going down, two fish are going, and an older fish comes in the opposite direction. He said, hello, boys, how's the water? They swim on, they turn to each other, what the hell is water? Because when you're in it, you don't know it. When you're dominant, you don't know it. Nothing, Kaiser Soze said, is more interesting that the devil did than to make people believe he didn't exist. That's what white supremacy is.
Well, I guess I would like to set out a challenge in somewhat the same format as Mr. Fry did to people on the moderate left. I mean, I've studied totalitarianism for a very long time, both on the left and on the right in various forms. And I think we've done a pretty decent job of determining when right-wing beliefs become dangerous. I think that they become dangerous when the people who stand on the right evoke notions of racial superiority or ethnic superiority, something like that. It's fairly easy to draw a box around them and place them to one side and necessary, and I think we've done a pretty good job of that. What I fail to see happening on the left, and this is with regards to the sensible left, because such a thing exists, is for the same thing to happen with regards to the radical leftists. Okay, so here's an open question. If it's not diversity, inclusivity, and equity as a triumvirate that mark out the too excessive left, and with equity defined, by the way, not as equality of opportunity, which is an absolutely laudable goal, but as equality of outcome, which is how it's defined, then exactly how do we demarcate the too extreme left? What do? We say, well, there's no such thing as the too extreme left? Well, that's certainly something that characterized much of intellectual thinking for the 20th century, as our high-order intellectuals, especially in places like France, did everything they could to bend over backwards to ignore absolutely everything that was happening in the catastrophic left world, in the Soviet Union and in Maoist China, not least. We've done a terrible job of determining how to demarcate what's useful from the left from what's pathological. And so it's perfectly okay for someone to criticize my attempts to identify something like a boundary. We could say diversity, inclusivity, and equity, especially equity, which is in fact equality of outcome, which is an absolutely abhorrent notion. If you know anything about history, you know that. And I'm perfectly willing to hear some reasonable alternatives, but what I hear continually from people on the left, first of all, as my opponents did, to construe every argument that is possibly able to be construed on the axis of group identification, and to fail to help the rest of us differentiate the reasonable left, which stands for the oppressed, necessarily, from the pathological left that's capable of unbelievable destruction. And what I see happening in the university campuses in particular, where the leftists absolutely predominate, and that's certainly not my imagination, that's well documented by perfectly reasonable people like Jonathan Haidt, is an absolute failure to make precisely that distinction. And I see the same thing echoed tonight. Thank you.
That was amazing, and I'll explain you why. This debate happened around somewhere in 2018. That's around 7 years from 2025. Do you know that in 2025, the left is dealing with the same problem that Jordon Peterson was talking about in 2018? But before I tell you what happened, I'll show you something. Watch this.
I'm wondering why my opponent won't say beyond its abhorrent and disgusting, why she won't say it is not okay. You have nothing to say? Abigail, what if he said it about your 3 children? Is that when you would say he should get out of the race, Abigail? You're running to be governor.
Well, you might be wondering, what did she not condemn and why was it so wrong? Well, a guy named Jay Jones was running to be the AG of Virginia, and some text messages of his got leaked. At first, you might say, well, that's not a problem. What were in those text messages? He fantasized about killing Todd Gilbert, a Republican, and his children, and pissing on their graves. So he fantasized about murdering someone, basically. And the candidate running for the governor of Virginia couldn't condemn that in that debate. Not only that candidate won, but the guy who fantasized about killing a Republican and their children and pissing on their graves won the AG over a Republican. Now you see, the left deals with this problem in the real world right now. They don't know who to vote for. For them, they don't know what's too left. They don't know when does the left goes too far. And that's a real example of 2025. Let's move on to the debate.
I don't know what mythological collective Mr. Peterson refers to. I'm part of the left. They're cantankerous. When they have a firing squad, it's usually in a semicircle. Part of the skepticism of rationality was predicated upon the Enlightenment Project, which says we're no longer going to be subordinate to skepticism, to superstition. We're going to think, and we're going to think well. Thomas Jefferson was one of the great arbiters of rationality, but he was also a man who was a slave owner. How do you reconcile that? That's the complication I'm speaking about. That's not either or. That's not a collective identity. Thomas Jefferson believed in a collective identity, that is, during the day. At night, he got some Luther Vandross songs, went out to the slave quarter, and engaged in sexual relations and had many children with Sally Hemings. His loins trumped his logic. And when he talks about postmodernism, I don't know who he's talking about. I teach postmodernism. It's kind of fun. Jacques Derrida, just to say his name is beautiful. Michel Foucault. Michel Foucault talked about the insurrection of subjugated knowledges, people who had been marginalized now beginning to speak. The subaltern, as Gayatri Spivak talks about it in post-colonial theory. The reason these people grew up and grew into existence and had a voice is because they were denied. As Ms. Goldberg said, our group identity was foisted upon us. We were not seen as individuals. Babe Ruth, when he broke the home run record, he didn't bat against all best ball players. He batted against the best white ball players. When it's been rigged in your favor from the very beginning, it's hard for you to understand how much you've been rigged. You're born on third base, think you hit a triple at the Toronto Blue Jays game. And here we are deriving our sense of identity from the very culture that we ignore. Look at the indigenous names and the First Nation names: Toronto, Saskatchewan, Winnipeg, Tim Hortons. But I'll tell you, there's an envy of the kind of freedom and liberty that people of color and other minorities bring because we bring the depth of knowledge in our body. There's a kind of jealousy of that. As the greatest living Canadian philosopher, Aubrey Drake Graham, says, jealousy is just love and hate at the same time. And so for me, I think it's necessary. I agree with Mr. Fry. We shouldn't be nasty and combative. And yet, I don't see nastiness and combativeness from people. I see them making a desire to have their individual identities respected. When I get shot down for no other reason than I'm black, when I get categorized for no other reason than my color, I am living in a culture that refuses to see me as a great individual.
Just a quick reminder here, guys, if you're new to the channel, please like the video and subscribe for more videos like this. Now, let's move on with Jordon Peterson's answer.
Jordon, let's have you jump in on this idea of what you see as the pernicious danger of groupthink when it comes to ethnicity, when it comes to gender. Why do you think that's one of the primal sins, in your view, of quote, political correctness?
Well, I think it's one of the primal sins of identity politics players on the left and the right, just to be clear about that. Personally, since this has got personal at times, I'm no fan of the identitarian right. I think that anybody who plays a game, a conceptual game where group identity comes first and foremost, risks an exacerbation of tribalism. It doesn't matter whether it's on the left or the right. With regards to the idea of group rights, well, there's a fundamental, and this is something we've fallen into terribly in Canada, not least because we had to contend with the threat of Quebec separatism. But the idea of group rights is extraordinarily problematic because the obverse of the coin of individual rights is individual responsibilities. And you can hold an individual responsible, and an individual can be responsible. And so that's partly why individuals have rights. But groups, how do you hold a group responsible? I mean, the whole idea is it's not a good idea to hold a group responsible. First of all, it flies in the face of the idea of the sort of justice systems that we've laid out in the West that are essentially predicated first on the assumption of individual innocence, but also on the possibility of individual guilt, not group guilt. We saw what happened in the 20th century many, many times when the idea of group guilt was enabled to get a foothold, let's say, in the polity and in the justice system. It was absolutely catastrophic. And so, okay, fine, group rights. Well, how are you going to contend with the alternative to that, the opposite of that? Or where's the group responsibility? And how are you going to hold your groups responsible? Well, we don't have to talk about that because we're too concerned with rectifying historical injustices, hypothetical and otherwise. And that's certainly not to say that there weren't any shortage of absolutely catastrophic historical injustices. That's not the point. The point is how you view the situation at the most fundamental level. And group rights are an absolute catastrophe, in my opinion.
Come on, Michelle, come in on that point. This is something you've written about. The idea that, in identity politics, the identity of the group is absolutely a valid part of the discourse, and individuals could and should be seen and participate in groups as they enter into the civic space.
I'm not sure that we necessarily have to analogize from the opposite of individual rights is individual responsibility. I'm not sure that analogy necessarily holds for the groups. I mean, in the United States, and one of the things that I think is complicated about this discussion is that we're talking about three very different cultural contexts, three different histories, three different kind of legal regimes. But in the United States, a huge part of our politics has been groups struggling for rights for their individual members, right? I mean, so women in the United States, seeking the right to reproductive control of their body. African Americans in the United States seeking redress from police brutality or discrimination or simply the kind of tendency in America of white people to call the police whenever they see an African American in a place where they don't think that they're supposed to be. And I don't see how you can contend with any of those social problems if you see society as just an ocean of atomized individuals. And I don't think there's anything pernicious about people banding together on the basis of their common identity to seek redress for discrimination and exclusion. I mean, I think that is everything that's best about our democracy. That is the definition of progress. And so, again, I keep stumbling with the idea that this is somehow tyrannical or that way lies Stalinism. And a lot of times people who are opposed to political correctness talk about the concept of category creep, or category creep, which is a concept that was originated by, I believe, an Australian academic, and it's basically the kind of a failure to draw distinctions, right? So that you kind of can't see the difference between, say, a KKK Grand Wizard and a conservative like, say, Ben Shapiro, or, that you kind of see everybody to your right as, fascist, sexist, totalitarian, intolerable. And I think that that is a real thing that happens in part because, undergraduates often think in broad and slightly overwrought categories. I know I did when I was a kid. Maybe still do, but I hear a lot of category creep in, again, the argument against political correctness or against seeking group redress, the idea that kind of that way lies dehumanization, or, that you're kind of 1 minute you're asking.
Let's have Stephen come in on this, because this is part of your opening remarks. You're a category creep, Stephen. Respond to that.
It's nice. I'm still very lost about why we aren't talking about political correctness. We're talking about politics, and that's fine. And I share exactly what you think about it. I'm not an enemy of identity politics per se. I can obviously see where it goes wrong and where it's annoying. Let's be empirical about this. How well is it working for you in America at the moment? Well, not well at all. Really isn't.
Right.
You can answer me in a moment. The reason that Trump and Brexit in Britain and all kinds of nativists all over Europe are succeeding is not the triumph of the right, it's the catastrophic failure of the left. It's our fault. We absolutely... My point is not that I've turned to the right or anything like that, or that I'm nice and fluffy and want everybody to be decent. I'm saying, fuck political correctness. Resist. Fight. If you have a point of view, fight it in the proper manner, using democracy as it should be, not channels of education, not language. It's so silly.
But
There's a chess rule, In chess, the best move to play in chess is not the best chess move, it's the move your opponent least wants you to play. At the moment, you're being recruiting sergeants for the right. By annoying and upsetting, and instead of fighting, either fighting or persuading. But political correctness is a middle course that simply doesn't work.
Well, first of all, you said be empirical. Now, empirical, as far as I know, the word means that which can be verified or falsified through the census.
Exactly.
So if we look at it in an objective way, the reality is that people don't have equal access to the means to articulate the very moment you're talking about.
I'm talking about the empirical results of this political attitude.
I understand that, but my point is simply this. I'm suggesting to you that people use the weapons at hand. Now, it was Abraham Joshua Heschel, the rabbi, who said, everybody's not guilty, but everybody's responsible. Right? That's a distinction there. Everybody clearly is not guilty, but what's interesting, look at the flip side. If you have benefited from 300 years of holding people in servitude, thinking that you did it all on your own. Why can't these people work harder? Let me see, for 300 years, you ain't had no job. So the reality is, for 300 years, you hold people in the bands. You hold them in subordination. You refuse to give them rights. Then all of a sudden, you free them and say you're now individuals. Not having the skills, not having the skills. I'm talking about America, first of all. I'm talking about the American society, first of all. I'm talking about the Northern Hemisphere. I'm talking about every society where enslavement has existed, but I'm speaking specifically of the repudiation of individual rights among people of color in America who were denied the opportunity to be individuals. So I obviously and ideally, and I think Michelle Goldberg does too, agree with the emphasis on individuals. What we're saying to you is that we have not been permitted to be individuals. We have not been permitted to exercise our individual autonomy and authority, and the refusal to do so, to recognize me as an individual, means when you roll up on me and I'm a 12-year-old boy in a park and you shoot first, in ways you do to black kids that you don't do to white kids, you are not treating that person as an individual. If we're living in a society where women are subject to aberrant forms of horrid, patriarchal, sexist, and misogynist behavior, you are not acknowledging the centrality of the individuality of women. You are treating them according to a group dynamic. And if we get beyond the ability of people on the right to understand the degree to which they have operated from the basis of benefit from group identity, without having said, I'll end by saying this. The great American philosopher Beyonce Knowles said that it has been said that racism is so American that if you challenge racism, you look like you're challenging America. We are challenging inequality. We are challenging the refusal to see me as an individual. When we overcome that, have at it, we're all on equal plane.
Okay, so I think it's fine. I think it's
good.
fine.
The pot is getting stirred here.
So I've got a couple of questions.
So let's your side spoke, so I'm going to go to Jordan, then to you,
Let's
Michelle.
assume for a moment that I've benefited from my white privilege. Okay, so let's assume that. That's
a good
fine.
assumption. That's
yeah,
a good
well, that's
assumption.
what you would say. So, so let's say, here, let's get precise about this, okay?
Was that very individual of you?
Let's get precise about this, okay?
Let's get precise.
To what degree is my present level of attainment or achievement a consequence of my white privilege? And I don't mean sort of. I mean, do you mean 5%? Do you mean 15%? Do you mean 25%? Do you mean 75%? And what do you propose I do about it? How about a tax? How about a tax that's like specialized for me so that I can account for my damn privilege, so that I can stop hearing about it? Now, let's get precise about one other thing, okay? We'll get precise about one other thing. Now,
Precise?
Yeah, precise, yes. And so, if we can agree, and we haven't, that the left can go too far, which it clearly can, then how would my worthy opponents precisely define when the left that they stand for has gone too far? You didn't like equity, equality of outcome. I think that's a great marker. But if you have a better suggestion and won't sidestep the question, so let's figure out how I can dispense with my white privilege, and so that you can tell me when the left has gone too far, since they clearly can. And that's what this debate is about political correctness. It's about the left going too far. And I think it's gone too far in many ways. And I'd like to figure out exactly how and when, so the reasonable left could make its ascendance again and we could quit all this nonsense.
Okay, Michelle, go for it.
Do you mind if I answer, Stephen? I will answer you, but I just want to answer Stephen Fry first, because you talked about, this is how we got Trump, and this is the failure of the left. And so I'm a journalist. I went to a ton of Trump rallies during the campaign in different parts of the country, and you're right. Everywhere I went, I heard complaints about political correctness. Far more than I heard complaints about, say, NAFTA. But when you asked people what they meant by political correctness, they called a woman they worked with girl, and she got mad at them. And they could, you couldn't in public wonder aloud whether the president of the United States was really a Muslim. They didn't like that they couldn't make gay jokes anymore. And so on the one hand, you're right, and I've written about this. I think that when you try to, that when people have these prejudices and you try to suppress them, it can create a kind of dangerous counter-reaction. But I also think that, what they were reacting to, again, to go back to the title of this debate, what they called political correctness, the fact that they had to have this urbane black president who they felt talked down to them, which is really what they meant. I don't see a way around that, because that is, like I said, that's progress. So to go to the question of when the left goes too far, to me it's pretty easy. Violence and censorship, right? I'm against violence, and I'm against censorship.
Well, let's take a look at her answer of when does the left get too far. Her answer says the left gets too far when these two things happen. Things get violent, and the left demands censorship. Let's just go back 5 years and see. Let's start from 2020. Well, BLM riots happened. People got banned. People who were even skeptical of COVID vaccine got banned. There were people on Twitter calling for children to be jailed just because they didn't wear a mask. And people got cancelled for having a normal opinion. You couldn't even say that a man is a man and a woman is a woman. That was inflammatory, controversial at that point. People were getting banned out of all the social media. There were people who were complaining that they were getting demonetized on the Republican side for just believing in the things that they believe and talking about it online. And well, let's just say in 2025 we had ICE working on the grounds, and then there were protests against ICE in LA. I guess it got out of hand. Enforcement officers got injured, cars got burned, stores got looted, and well, that's that. I don't think there was a single year where the left didn't either went violent or either censored somebody, or they at least called for people getting censored. So as you can see, by our own standard, the left has gone too far. Let's move on with the debate.
Jordan's point about how does he in a sense, get an equal voice in this debate back if it is implied that his participation brings with it this baggage of white privilege that doesn't allow him to see clearly the issues that are before us.
But that is to be complicit in the very problem itself, terminologically. You're beginning at a point that's already productive and controversial. You're saying, how can he get his equality back? Who are you talking about? Jordon Peterson, trending #1 on Twitter? Jordon Peterson, with an international bestseller? I want him to tweet something out about me in my book. Jordon Peterson, right? This is what I'm saying to you. Why the rage, bruh? You're doing well, but you're a mean, mad white man, and you're gonna get us right. And I have never seen so much wine and snowflaking. There's enough wine in here to start a vineyard. And what I'm saying to you empirically and precisely, when you ask the question about white privilege, the fact that you ask it in the way you did, dismissive, pseudoscientific, non-empirical, and without justification, the truth is that white privilege doesn't act according to quantifiable segments. It's about the degree to which we are willing as a society to grapple with the ideals of freedom, justice, and equality upon which it's based. Number two, what's interesting to me, you're talking about not having a collective identity. What do you call a nation? Are you Canadian? Are you Canadian by yourself? Are you an individual, or are you part of a group? When America formed its union, it did so in opposition to another group. So the reality is that those who are part of group identities in politics deny the legitimacy and validity of those groups and the fact that they have been created thusly, and then have resentment against others. All I'm asking for is the opportunity. The quotation you talk about, the difference between equality of outcome and equality of opportunity, that's a staid and retried argument, hackneyed phrase derived from the halcyon days of the debate over affirmative action. Are you looking for outcomes that can be determined equally, or are you looking for opportunity? If you free a person after a whole long time of oppression and say now you are free to survive, if you have no skills, if you have no quantifiable means of existence, what you have done is liberated them into oppression. And all I'm suggesting to you, Lyndon Baines Johnson, one of our great presidents, said, if you start a man in a race 100 years behind, it is awfully difficult to catch up. So I don't think Jordon Peterson is suffering from anything except an exaggerated sense of entitlement and resentment, and his own privilege is invisible to him, and it's manifest with lethal intensity and ferocity right here on stage.
Jordon, I'm going to have to let you respond to that if you wish.
Well, what I derive from that series of rebuttals, let's say, is twofold. The first is that saying that the radical left goes too far when they engage in violence is not a sufficient response by any stretch of the imagination, because there are sets of ideas in radical leftist thinking that led to the catastrophes of the 20th century, and that was at the level of idea, not at the level of violent action. It's a very straightforward thing to say you're against violence. It's like being against poverty. It's like, you know, generically speaking, decent people are against poverty and violence. It doesn't address the issue in the least. And with regards to my privilege or lack thereof, I mean, I'm not making the case that I haven't had advantages in my life and disadvantages in my life like most people. You don't know anything about my background or where I came from, and it doesn't matter to you because fundamentally I'm a mean white man. That's a hell of a thing to say in a debate.
What an amazing answer by Jordon. You know what pains me more than Jordon actually trying to educate them? It's the fact that they were not ready to listen. And this is what he said just after Jordon's answer.
The mean, mad white comment was not predicated upon my historical excavation of your past. It's based upon the evident vitriol with which you speak and the denial of a sense of equanimity among combatants in an argument. So I'm saying again, you're a mean, mad white man, and the viciousness is evident.
Okay. Let's reset.
Now this is, I think, a face of a delusional man who thinks that he's right and everybody is wrong and is not ready to listen to anyone. You know what's one thing you could take away from this video? Is that the left still don't know what to do. They still don't know what is too far. They're electing people who fantasize about killing children, pissing on their graves. They're electing people who cannot answer simple questions like if they want men in women's sports or not. It just tells me that the left has still not figured out, and if they don't do it soon enough, they're either gonna give in to the radical left thinking or they're gonna die. Their views and their ideas are not gonna spread onto people because everyone can see how bad and how extreme they are getting. Charlie Kirk died. Charlie Kirk died because of the views that he gave. It is getting out of hand. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. Whatever you think, let me know in the comments about this video. If you enjoyed this video and my breakdown, please subscribe and like this channel for more videos like this. I'll see you in the next one. Till then, take care everyone, and bye-bye.